Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
And a happy Halloween to you
Halloween. Happy Halloween.
all.
We made it.
Yeah, we finally made it. This is our last spooky episode for a while. I don't know. We always do horror and stuff anyway. But,
Yeah.
But just generally, and for the
But
month
like
of Halloween.
specifically picked ones, yeah.
Yeah. And for that, we did a little book called My Friend Dahmer, which, as me and John were talking about, should probably be called My Slight Acquaintance in High School Dahmer. This book is it's not a true crime. It's a true story or whatever. It's based on a true story of this, and it's by the guy who lived it, so it's like an autobiography autobiography. It's an autobiographical comic about this guy who was friends with Jeffrey Dahmer in high school.
Who was mild acquaintances, yeah.
Yeah, we'll say friends, but as friends as you can get with Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you can say friend and like, yeah, he's that guy that like we hung out with sometimes, but like he was not like a best friend, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't spending nights at each other's houses or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're not going to be in the Goonies together. This book is by a dude named, what's his name? John
So his pen name is Jeff Beckderf.
Beckderf.
But it was John Beckderf.
Okay. So his name is John Beckderf, and this is in Ohio. It takes place, and he went to high school with Jeffrey Dahmer, and so some of this is from his first-person experience, and then a lot of it is also just research because he had to cite a bunch of sources because there's a lot of stuff that he wasn't on site for, like things that he's filling in Jeffrey Dahmer doing at these times.
Yeah, but it would be things that filled in like, oh, I saw him this day, and then like, you know, through research, like, oh, like that's a day that like this shit happened.
Right. So like this, I'm assuming all the stuff with him directly in high school is autobiographical, and then everything else is like research things.
Yeah.
So like we start off with something that has to be researched.
Yeah, because it would be junior high.
Yes. So this is we start off in the comic. Also, this comic is black and white. It is like a kind of cartoonish telling of it, and I say cartoonish just like in the drawing style. It's like not realistic or whatever. And then also like the panel layouts are very interesting. They're all based kind of on like 4 panels a page, and so it's a very quick read. So if you feel at all intrigued by this story, check it out. It's very cool. But yeah, so we start off in the prologue of this book, and it's Jeffrey Dahmer in middle school, and he is walking on the side of the road, and of course, you know, as Jeffrey Dahmer does, he runs into a dead cat that had been hit by a car, and he picks it up, and then he brings it to his shed behind his house, and when he's there, he sees some kids on the way there, and they're like, "Hey, what are you carrying, you loser?" And they're making fun of him, so we get the kind of how he's always been made fun of as a kid or whatever. And then he's like, "Oh, I put him in acid."
Yeah,
like
so
it's
can
a cat,
see their insides and stuff.
Yeah, I like to see these animals' inside, so I always get roadkill and I put them in jars of acid. They're like, "No, you don't." He's like, "Yeah, there's my cabin, my little hut right there, my little treehouse of horror." And and
come on inside and look.
Yeah, my dad's a chemist, so I can get acid no problem. And they're like, "You fucking liar." He's like, "Why don't you come look?" And right there, I'm like, he's gonna murder these kids.
I was like, wow, how young did this start?
Yeah. And so he shows them. He brings them in, and there's just jars of like a rabbit, a raccoon, a crow, and he's got his acid. He's like, "Yeah, the bodies take a long time to dissolve because I got like shitty acid, basically, diluted acid." And so they're like, "No, these aren't real. This is fake." And he's like, "Oh, you think it's fake?" And he picks up a raccoon in a jar that's pretty much almost completely dissolved, he says. And he throws it on the ground, and it just starts smelling, and they start gagging and about to throw up. They all run out scared. And they're like, "You're such a freak, Dahmer." And they like freak out on him, and then that's kind of like the beginning. Like, I'm a freak.
Yeah, and I like the main panel because it's like he's got 2 roads he can go down now. It looks like.
Yeah. It shows him like standing alone, because he's a freak. But he's like, which way are we going? There's a path to the left and a path to the right.
Yeah, which way is this gonna turn? I mean, we know how it turns out, but
yeah,
but yeah, I like the way he left a little bit of like foreshadowing on some things. So.
Yeah. And so this is like we start off just kind of learning about him in junior high, and like how he's a weird kid, always getting picked on.
Yeah, very shy. Really didn't have any friends that they could tell of in junior high.
Right. But he was always interested in like biology and stuff, apparently. And
stealing fetal pigs from school.
Yeah, that's one thing. When he was interested in biology, but in biology class apparently he was staring at like the fetal pig that they have, because back in the 70s they would like dissect pigs.
I dissected a pig.
I never dissected anything in high school. Although I went to a very private Christian school, so they were like.
I went to public school, and this is in Texas. And I did this in school, just to point that out because we were talking about serial killer here.
Uh-huh.
I dissected the pig in school because I was told to, because it was first grade.
You're like, I always dissected animals.
I dissected animals.
All the time.
That's horrible. No. Anyway.
My garage.
Wow.
Anyway, John's a serial killer. We all know that. But he's so unassuming, you never guess it. Just like everybody says, he was just quiet.
He was just quiet.
Yeah.
That is not the least quiet person.
You just never shut up. That would be the John version of it. He was just so nice and never shut up. I just thought it. You'd be like the John Wayne Gacy of serial killers. We're like, he was just the clown. He would just come by and be nice to the kids. And turns out all those bodies in the basement.
Wow.
The floorboards.
You can check the floorboards.
Check under the floorboards. But you don't have a floorboards, do you?
Nope, no, I don't.
Okay.
So
anyway,
Jeffrey
back
Dahmer.
to Dahmer. Anyway, back to Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, basically, it was just like this kid, John. What's his name? McDurf, not McDurf. Durf. Beckderf. I want to say McDurf just for fun. But yeah, John Beckderf. Seeing him in junior high too, but they weren't friends then. Just noticing him, like, yeah, he was a weird kid who always sit by himself. And then one day he actually steals that pig. Which is interesting. Also, they show a picture of or a panel of him taking note of a jogger who always jogged by his house all the time, and and then it was just like, oh yeah, when you get introduced, like how his family life was, how his parents were and stuff. We see his mom, and I didn't know why they introduced this, but we see his mom, and she's like, he comes home from school one day, and she just seems like a normal housewife in the 70s, but then she's like, here's our new interior decorator, which I was like, what the fuck? Like, who gets an interior decorator for their house? But other than like rich people or something. But
yeah.
Apparently in the 70s that might have been a thing that like just normal people did to make sure their house was like up to date with the times or something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like some super richy thing. But the interior decorator she gets has cerebral palsy. So he's like, and I'm saying this like it's written.
Just how it's written on the page.
He's like, she's like, hey, say hello to our interior decorator, Mr. Burlman. And he says, hello, Jeff. And so, because he's, and then Jeff just says, hello, and then, snickers to himself. I did think that the way they treated this guy, or like the way they made fun of him, and like the whole thing with their group is that Jeff will mimic this guy's mannerisms, and just in general, people with cerebral palsy or epilepsy
or like
or
Tourette's
impediments,
yeah,
and will make them laugh, and that's how they kind of become friends as a group. And I was like, that's such a 70s like fucked up thing. Like, we just make fun of.
He makes weird noises and stuff, and so we make fun of him. But also, he's fun to have around because he makes us laugh.
Yeah, so it's a weird thing and that's like how they would connect with each other. They would talk to each other in this weird, Tourette's language or whatever that they're joking around with. So, but they're all just making fun of handicapped people, so or disabled, whatever. It's disabled people. Is that?
I think disabled.
Is direct? I don't know.
It's changed.
Now I sound like I'm from the 70s.
Yeah.
No, that was a different word. Anyway, but yeah, basically we just see, the day he stole that pig was the day he came home to see his mom's decorator. And then also we see his little cabin in the woods. He got that pig. He stole that pig. He's dissecting it and throwing it in a vat of acid. We see him like poking the body with his fingers and stuff too, which is pretty gross. Pretty gross, yeah. And then we just see, his dad. said he was a nice man, but he was a chemist and he was driven and had a very strong personality. But like basically he cared more and it was more comfortable around test tubes than he was around teenage boys or teenage kids. And then the mom, they said she was odd and moody and fragile, so she probably had some kind of like, mental thing.
Underlying
later on, they talk about her having like extreme mental issues and dealing with that kind of stuff. So.
And he had a younger brother, Dave. He's about 7 years younger, but he's
and they're
not
just like, this isn't involved.
But he's you just know he's there, but he's not part of the story.
Yeah, he's like, I never hung out with him. I didn't know who he was. So then basically we just see that his parents are always arguing and shit in the background,
and they're always bringing up like the ends of their arguments are always like, I hate this marriage, I'm done with this marriage, I hate you, kind of things.
Yeah.
So like there's definitely a lot of animosity, a lot of bad stuff going on in the house.
Yeah. So then we cut to he's a freshman in
high school. Yeah.
So freshman year high school, he's in the library and he's doing one of his like pretending to be disabled, and having like an outburst, like he was a Tourette's or something.
Yeah, in the library.
And then he would like, this was his joke. So he'd do one like loud noise, and then he would go back to reading his book, and then the librarian would be like, "Who did that? Quiet in the library!" And then him and his friends were laughing, so they'd be like, they get in trouble because she thought it was them making the noises, and then so basically that is how they like come to learn and befriend him. Is they're laughing at his thing. They just thought he was a weird, funny kid, making fun of people who have epileptic fits, slurred speech, spastic tics, and cerebral palsy. So any of those things, he would kind of do a thing to make fun of them and or to make people laugh or whatever. Just these 4 kids specifically. But they also say like in high school, he kind of went from like in middle school he's like a little string bean kind of kid to he gets more throughout it, but the more in high school, the more he looks like a 45-year-old man. Me and John said there's pictures of him in this book that are actual pictures that show him what he looked like, and I'm like, that's a child. Like he looks like a 45-year-old.
Exactly. He just looks like a stocky 45-year-old guy. Like he kind of is like built like kind of like a linebacker a little bit. Like as far and like for a while, like in high school, I guess at least. Yeah. Well, I just mean like he's got broad shoulders. He's got like
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just joking because I'm like, like a 70s.
Yeah, like a 70s linebacker.
Not like a modern day linebacker. He's not 320 running a 4.9 or whatever it is, or 4.8 or whatever it is. Like he basically, and that just like at the beginning, he's like a little bit more bigger, like he's taller now, but he's not as muscular. But then basically just throughout his, you see how he gets more muscular and everything throughout and taller, to where he ends up like very kind of formidable, but he's still just like a kind of quiet.
He looks formidable, but he's not like a very necessarily overbearing. He doesn't. He at least outwardly at school, he's not like he's using that to his advantage or anything.
Yeah, but they say basically this started because his dad at home suggested like, hey, you should lift weights to like give him something to do, like something to be interested in. So that's why he starts lifting weights and becoming buff, which I'm sure became a thing later on in his murdering. Was he was able to, overpower people? He was just strong enough. But yeah, so I don't know. The main thing about this book is it just kind of follows John and his 3 friends, which what was their names again? It was like
Mike, Kent, and Neil.
Yeah, Mike, Kent, and Neil. They're kind of interchangeable. Nothing really specific happens except to Mike, right?
Yeah, Mike's the only one who has another encounter later. We'll get to that.
So, but yeah, everybody else just kind of, they all are this group, and they all kind of, they'll make funny noises and look at Jeffrey from afar, and then he'll like come over and hang out with them, and they'll talk, and then they never hang out outside of school, though, which I find really weird. That they're willing to hang out with him in school, but they're like, and that is where our relationship ends. like we'll
once we leave these doors,
and they'll talk about like, hey, after school today, you 3 should come over to my house and we'll watch.
Yeah, that was weird. They did do that in front of, at least in comic wise, like.
And I just thought maybe this is like a 70s thing that you would be so like rude or whatever to someone, but like basically they just introduced the idea that he was never like part of the group outside of school. But but they never like thought about it. Like they never. it's not like they did it maliciously. They were just like, yeah, he's just not one of our friends.
No, he's the weird kid. Like, we hang out at school, but whatever.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll talk to you later, man.
And they also, because obviously this is from his point this is from John's point of view, not Jeffrey's. We don't know if that like hurt his feelings or anything like that. And he never showed any of that. So maybe that's also why they never moved forward, because he was never like, hey guys, I want to hang out.
Yeah, that's one thing they express, is that like besides his outbursts and like being like a goof with them, otherwise at school he is stone faced. You couldn't see an emotion on him, nothing.
Yeah. So since seeing that runner run that one time when he was in junior high, that guy apparently runs by his house like every day. And this is where we find out, and he found out, that apparently he was gay. He watched this guy run by his house every day, and I guess, was attracted to him. So it's kind of like this sexual awakening really was even worse, because now you're in the 70s, you're a weird kid already.
Small town.
Yeah, small town, and now you're gay. God damn it. You're like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, because obviously that was not looked by a lot. Still, it wasn't as something that looked like it was, was okay. It was like a weird, or like, especially in a small town like this. Yeah.
So, yeah, he's not living in like San Francisco or something. Like, if you're on Haight and Ashbury, no one cares. But if you're living in the middle of Ohio, you're like, okay, yeah, this might be a problem. And then also, like, he's so awkward and weird anyway that just add that on top of it, people, yeah, it wouldn't be good. So, but then the other thing that started to happen was, and this is the thing I was thinking to myself. I'm like, so I feel like even with Gary Ridgway, the episode we did on the Green River Killer, and some of the other serial killers I've heard of, there's a lot of times where in their life that if they had just like had therapy or like a psychiatrist to talk to about stuff and then work things out, I feel like maybe they'd still be a sociopath or something, but would they have become a murderer or a serial killer? And I don't know. And this is one of those times because he's so lonely and he has no one to talk to about any of these things. Back then, you couldn't talk to anybody about sex anyway. So it was like super, taboo and stuff. And even more than, it's still hard to talk about those things with parents or whatever. But you imagine back in the 70s when it was like, we don't talk about any emotions, much less sex or any of that stuff. And especially if you're not heterosexual, don't even talk about any of that shit. So, so he has no one to talk to about being gay, but also has no one to talk to about feeling lonely or sad or out of control of his entire life, And so, like, because all he sees is his parents' marriage is shitty. He has no control over that. He has no control over, like, what happens in high school or any of that shit. Like, no one likes him or anything. So it's like, okay. So basically, I see he starts, like, the thing that really fucks with him is he starts fantasizing about his gay lovers being dead. But I don't think it was being dead is the thing that turns him on. It's they're not moving because he has full control over them.
Yeah.
Like, he just wants to be able to do whatever he wants to do without having to learn how to talk to people or having them freak out on him or be weird to him or anything or call him a loser.
Yeah, that seemed to be the crux of it, is that they're dead because that way there's no like awkwardness for him.
Yeah, for him. So
I mean, for us looking at this on a page and reading about it and listening about it, like, that's like bone chilling basically. But in his mind, it's that like, right. Oh, I don't want to have to. Yeah, I don't have to. Like you said, you don't learn to talk to people or like have to deal with like any weirdness afterwards or whatnot. It's just that's it.
Exactly. I mean, you have to deal with the body, but
that's true.
But other than that, yeah. So that's kind of where I was thinking, like, oh, this if he had just been able to go tell his parents, hey, I'm gay, I'm having weird thoughts or whatever, and then go talk to a therapist about things, maybe he could have worked it out where he's like, okay, I'm gay, but I don't necessarily have to, like, I can work through these problems of talking to people or whatever. Yeah. So where, and eventually he does end up being able to talk to people, but in a different way than you want, in a bad way, we'll say.
Yeah.
But from this, he eventually becomes very, like, just outside of school, when he's hanging out with his friends, doing the one thing that makes them laugh or whatever. they're just pretty much he's just distant from everybody and doing his own thing, and also he becomes a pretty hardcore alcoholic, and but one thing that definitely happened that I guess Jeffrey talked about was that same jogger he was like obsessed with, and he got to a point where he would like we said, he's fantasizing about it. He's like working up to something in his mind. He thought about actually killing him, and he actually prepared to do it and waited outside like under a bush or whatever to come out and hit the dude in the head with a bat and like do whatever with, and whether he would have killed him or anything else, but basically that one day the jogger didn't show up, and he was like, and so basically that idea had gotten so far to the point where he was ready to do something about it, and that one day the guy didn't show up, and it was like, whew, lucky that dude had something to do that day.
Yeah, lucky that dude had something. And then also, I guess that also was like a step back for Dahmer, or at least seemingly in the comic too, because he was like, oh, whoa, because he didn't try.
Yeah, it was probably like, oh man, I can't believe I got that far.
Yeah,
or like I never thought it would, I could have done something real bad or whatever. But like he wasn't. I don't know if it was just that like the fact that he got that far in his fantasy in real life, or from his fantasies in real life, was able to satiate like his urges or whatever. But yeah, basically he just never tried to get that guy again.
Yeah.
So we don't know why necessarily, but yeah. So like I said, from this,
it was weird that I just want to point that when they hung out with Dahmer at school, now they were like calling it the like Jeffrey Dahmer fan club.
Yes, because they were all like fans of his little thing.
Yeah, I know. It's just funny to see that in words and be like, wow.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a Jeffrey Dahmer fan club. If you know anything about serial killers,
that's true. Yeah, for some reason, serial killers, like other than the media, like giving them fun. I say this fun name. I'm saying they pick names that highlight and elevate them. They should. They're not. They should. They could be like the small dick killer. Like if they really want to.
Wow, I was going to say the big dick killer because you said yeah.
But I just mean like
we were
that's
thinking
what they,
the same thing. Just
because they're like the cool crazy mangler murderer. Like that's the names that they give them. It's like no, like that that's what they want. They want to be famous, kind of. Or
the Night Stalker. In the 70s, maybe it would be more like that.
Maybe, but still, I'm just saying, like, yeah, if they're gonna give a name, it should be like the. Yeah, like, oh, the idiot dummy killer, or I don't know. Anyway, what I was getting at is that, yeah,
you're not allowed to name people.
There probably are because of that, and for some reason, some people have like.
No, people want fame. People they want infamy too. So you could be famous because you like or are married to someone infamous.
Yeah, but like you were saying, like for some reason there is also a weird like some people have a weird like attraction to that kind of like. Power and like
what I think is it's people that want to fix people.
Yeah,
I think it's like ladies or men who are like,
oh, I could fix him.
They see a broken person and they're like, I can fix him.
Yeah,
because they're just as crazy as that guy.
Yeah,
in different ways.
Particularly, what was it the women that were fawning over the Night Stalker?
Ramirez,
yeah. Like when I saw videos of people like Elvis crying over him. I was like, what the.
Elvis cried out?
Well, if like they would see him be like, oh,
you mean like that?
Yeah, like that. Like,
I was like Elvis. I was like, I think Elvis was dead.
No. I'm sorry. I say that in my head, knowing what I'm talking about. I was saying sometimes when you listen to like live Elvis recordings,
it sounds like the
screaming.
Beatles or something. Yeah. But it's for.
But it's for a serial killer. Yeah. So
no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, fully. Yeah. I mean, Manson is an example.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
So anyway, Jeffrey Dahmer fan club in this time is, them just being fans of him making silly noises.
Yeah, being goofy with them. And but we see like as he's going through his early high school life, like his mom is degenerating into, I guess, a mess of nerves. I don't know if she actually had Tourette's or anything. From what it seems though, she would have like muscle spasm freakouts. Where she would be in like extreme pain walking around from these spasms, and then she'd have them until her muscles were just so tired they couldn't do it anymore, and then she'd like pass out on the couch from exhaustion. And so he would watch her do that, and then he would mimic it at school. So, like, some people thought that, it was just from his interior designer, but other people thought, he's making fun of his mom. And so that's kind of what they showed is, and I never heard of that before. I was like, that would be the weirdest fucking thing. And also, if you saw your mom walking around having extreme muscle spasms where she looks like she's having an epileptic seizure and then falls down in exhaustion and immediately goes to sleep, I would call 911.
Yeah.
That would be a 911 call, not a, mom's so weird.
Anyway, I'm going to my room.
I'm going to go to my room and try to mimic her for school tomorrow or whatever. So, like, that's what's going on in his household. His mom is having extreme, like, mental breakdown or something, and, like, no one's giving a fuck about it. This might be why later on we find out that, like, the mom's, like, they get a divorce or whatever, and the mom, like, we were talking about this. The mom's just like, hey, you can stay at the house by yourself until your dad gets back from wherever the fuck he is. Have fun.
Yeah, I'm taking your younger brother. We haven't talked about this entire thing.
Yeah.
And
this scene might be why, because she's like, he never gave a fuck about me. So, I don't know. They never had any. It doesn't seem like they had a bond at all kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and one thing I really liked about this, and this is very, very true, whenever you hear about kids that are going through like this crazy mental stuff, and especially back in the day, I think, nowadays I'm like, somehow this still happens where parents or adults are just, very like, they're not seeing this pain or whatever in a child. But definitely in the 70s this would happen because, kids were not thought of as people or whatever and stuff at all. And like the idea that like a child could have a bad life is no, they just forget everything. Yeah. They don't remember anything or whatever. They just live happy life and eat candy and then
I'm paying for them. They live rent free. Like they got a good life.
Be grateful.
They have a good life.
Yeah. And so but yeah, this one thing he says is some people would like ask after he told his story, the author of this story, after he told this, people would ask him, how come you didn't do anything? If you saw all these things that you're showing in this book, how come you didn't like call the cops or tell someone or whatever? And back then, parents or adults don't give a fuck about you. So they'd be like, what am I supposed to do? Go run some laps, pussy, or whatever the fuck they would say back then.
Yeah, I mean, basically.
And then, what are you, gay? Like, why are you talking about emotions to me or whatever? You're worried about your friend? Is he your girlfriend or something? Like, that's probably what you would get from someone back then if you brought this up to any adult. And then, 2, he says, a better question is, where were all the damn adults? Like, how, there were adults back then seeing the exact same shit and not doing anything about it.
Yeah, it was, but apparently it's that his parents were so wrapped up in the things that they had going on and being, butting heads and being mad at each other.
Yeah. That
all of this kind of stuff seemingly went unnoticed.
But also every other teacher and everything that's seeing him every day in class just ignoring him.
Yeah.
And this reminded me of, did you ever see Carrie? Read Carrie?
Yeah.
The book or the movie? So, that movie has a really good example of how teachers in the 70s work. There's like a scene where like the mean girls are being mean, and then the teacher comes in and goes, how dare you girls? And then as they leave, she's like, come on, Carrie, stand up for yourself. What are you, like a loser or whatever? And, like calls her a loser to her face. And then when she gets the like pig's blood poured on her, the teacher's laughing along with everybody else.
Yeah, everyone laughing.
That this prank is happening. I'm like, that's a teacher who cared in the book. Like, so just an example of what, people in the 70s were like towards children in general is Carrie's a good example, and that's why we're like, yeah, Carrie killed all of them for a good reason. So, but yeah, I mean, so you could say like maybe the way people were treated him, it definitely didn't help that he had nowhere to turn or anything. So that's why I was like, maybe if he had somewhere to turn, he wouldn't have became this.
He wouldn't be the monster that he became.
Yeah, he might be different or have mental issues that he has to deal with his whole life, but he wouldn't be a serial killer that, murdered people and all this stuff. So, but yeah, so I just thought that was a very like hard hitting thing where he says, we're the damn adults. Like people ask me, I'm like fucking 14. What am I supposed to do? I don't know anything, So like, yeah, it's like, what the fuck? So, I don't know if this part John, you said some specific things in this book freaked you out. This was a section I thought maybe this did, but
I mean, just the because so again, I watched a lot of these kind of things growing up, but sometimes they don't always hit on the childhood stuff, and this we definitely got a lot of little weird things that he's doing that I think anybody had noticed. Yeah, it would be oh, why is he doing that? And
yeah. Also, at this time, you got to remember serial killers are not well understood.
Yes.
This was at the early beginnings of understanding there are people who kill people because they have a compulsion and all these things. And we are barely just calling them serial killers. We have if you ever watch Mindhunter or whatever, we have the FBI profiling thing just coming into play, becoming part of how they're finding these murderers and stuff. So this isn't something people are aware of really. And even the serial killers we had before, they didn't call him that. Ed Gein, they didn't call him a serial killer. They were he's a weirdo. I don't know, a maniac. Or whatever, that's what they would call him. So, but yeah, this is definitely, if you see someone hurting animals or something as a childhood, that's one of the tell signs of a fucked up kid or whatever, is that they're hurting live animals. But that this one time John and Jeff go fishing. This must have been in the summer, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Before school started. There just happened to be a fishing hole behind John's house, and Jeff was I didn't know this place was back here. He's yeah. And so they go fishing, and there's little sunfish in the pond, and John specifically says you have to throw them back because obviously it's not a stocked pond. It's just whatever's in there.
Yeah.
And so Jeff gets a fish, and he pulls it out, and it's just a little, baby fish. It's not even anything.
Yeah.
And he takes out his pocket knife, and he just fucking goes ham on it, chops it into little itty bitty bits.
Yeah, he's just hacking away at this fish.
Yeah. And John is sitting there what the fuck? I told you to throw him back. He's what'd you do that for? And it's just Jeffrey standing at his knife saying, I just wanted to see what it looked like on the inside or whatever. It's Jesus. So yeah, you got any
to
friends
see their insides.
You got any friends that tell you they want to see their fish or any other animal from the inside out? That's a friend you should let some adults know.
Yeah,
about.
let some adults know that there's something's going on there.
Yeah, and hopefully adults now are a little more in tune, but definitely try to find an adult who cares about people. so yeah, someone who, I don't know, a therapist or something or whatever. I don't know, someone who could do something about it. But yeah, basically that was kind of a weird, just holy shit, this is a red flag. But I bet that's the kind of thing they're talking about when they say, why didn't you do anything? You had these red flags. Well, back then they weren't really red flags. It was just you're a weird fucking kid.
Yeah.
Or you didn't listen to me or whatever, And also, you got to think of it, animals back then weren't really valued as much. Killing a fish was it's a fish. But if, nowadays people are more sensitive to those things, so.
Yeah, we have greater understanding of the animal.
I mean, fish don't have feelings. We know that, but but from Nirvana we know that. So,
okay.
Yeah. But yeah. So I mean, not that people don't kill fish now or whatever, but the idea of a child who's 15, hacking up a fish in front of you might have a different thing back then than it would now.
Wasn't that in the Ed Gein one too? Didn't he poke it through the eye?
Yes. Yeah.
He was oh yeah, I just wanted to see what happened if I poke this fish hook through the eye. That's right, with his brother. Okay, yeah. See, common theme.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's junior year now.
Yeah, so it's junior year, and now he's full blown alcoholic, and basically he uses this alcohol to dull his urges so that he doesn't have any urges at school or home or anything. He's just always drunk.
Yeah, he's basically numb to himself all the time.
Yeah, so that's mainly the main thing is just killing everything, and so much so that his friends notice he always smells like alcohol now, and they're this is one thing, this is thing I just could not believe. This is why I was this had to be adults back then just didn't give a fuck about kids. Is in my high school, if you came in smelling like alcohol or weed or smoke,
oh yeah,
you would be in trouble.
Oh yeah, for sure. Same.
I'm talking about my public school I went to and the private school I went to as well. After and so Like both of those in high school, I did half and half at each school. So like, yeah, either one you would get in trouble. This kid comes to school with alcohol on him, drinks so much that he's like drunk at school and smelling like it and everything. So much that his friends are like, "Oh my God, what did you fucking drink or whatever?" And he says like the teachers never said anything about it. And I'm like, there's no way that a teacher wouldn't know that he was drunk or that he was off. Or something.
Well, they said like the teachers were weird, and as far as like from him growing up with that is because he made a mention of that one teacher being like, "Oh, you smoke grass? I bet I could roll a joint better than you."
Right, because they were like hippies or whatever.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, I mean, but that doesn't mean. I mean, I think it's also just like, hey, I'm not like either like you do what you want, man, and the hippie ideology, or just like you're a kid and I don't get you're not a person.
Yeah,
fuck off. You know, like so weird stuff like that would happen with him. So he never got addressed for the alcohol or anything. And then there's another scene where some kid falls and they like John and Jeffrey see him fall, and like Jeffrey just thinks it's the funniest thing in the world that he hurt himself. And he's like, I always thought that was like John was saying, like I always thought it was really weird that he's so like laughed so hard. And that's one thing about this book that's interesting is I bet before he found out that Jeffrey Dahmer was a serial killer, he was just like, that was my weird friend Jeff. Never really think about it. Like he slightly remembered that kid fell and Jeff laughed real hard, but whatever, you know, that's Jeff.
Yeah.
And then
then
you see the news program about what he did, and you're like, oh my God. And then you go back and you put this filter on your old memories, and it just changes the outlook of everything.
Yeah.
So I can see a lot of this stuff. He might be reading into things sometimes like that. I'm not sure if that's him saying, you know, he was a sociopath and this is how I knew. Because he didn't know back then.
No, it's just more of like, gosh, why is he so fucking weird?
Yeah. So, like, I think for him, he just included it because he thought it was weird, and it might have been like, oh, I'm a you know, that's him being kind of a sociopath, not caring that someone gets hurt, not able to empathize with someone getting hurt really bad or whatever. But yeah, so...
yeah, basically, and it kind of shows back and forth, like, him having, like, a kind of a, you know, normal childhood as far as, like, at home, like he hangs out with friends. He goes inside his mom's make cocoa. Like, oh, you want your friend to stay for dinner? Like, kind of a nice thing. And then back Jeffrey's home, his parents are fighting.
Yeah. When you say he's got friends, he's talking about John.
John, I'm sorry, yeah. So John,
the guy who wrote this book, has friends and has a regular life. Then they cut to Jeffrey's life, and it's much different.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's like his folks are fighting, so he's kind of off doing his own thing. Like
doing his own thing, meaning collecting roadkill.
Collecting roadkill, yeah. Apparently, he had this place out in the woods by his house.
Yeah, not the same cabin because that got found out or whatever. Yeah. The little treehouse of horror we said earlier. He now would just do it in he had like a stump in the middle of the woods that he would like skin these animals on and stuff and deflesh them.
Yeah, and look at all their insides.
Yeah. And then we get like a weird story, and this is the story that I said like we learn about. He does know how to talk to people, but to manipulate certain situations. So there's like as you do when you're like a junior in high school, you go to like Washington D.C. for a field trip or whatever, for civics class or whatever the fuck they had, and so they went to Washington D.C. and Jeffrey has an idea, and he's like, why don't we go? Do a prank call kind of thing, but like see if we can get to see the president. And they're like, the president? I don't know about that. He's like, well, I bet we can see the vice president.
Yeah, what does he do anyway?
Yeah, and so he actually calls the vice president's office from a payphone, like a couple blocks from the White House, and it's like, hey, I'm a kid and we're in class. Can we come visit you in the office and you give us a tour? And he's like, okay. I assume the vice president's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs.
Yeah,
wearing a sweater. Following Carter's, advice.
Yeah. So I looked it up just because I was curious. Because I you always remember presidents, but that's just because it's kind of show you, like, what do vice presidents do? As far as like now, we definitely know them more in the last couple of years.
What do they do?
But like, so Walter Frederick Mondale was vice president under Carter, and I just found out he actually died in 2020 last year. And that's again,
we all know that we all celebrated his life.
Well, yeah, that's just saying that's sad. Like the presidents when they past president, they always are like it's a big it's like a week-long thing usually on the news. I had no idea. So that's just sad to say. It's crazy that they got into the same room as the vice president of the United States.
The serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was able to talk his way into being let into a special tour just with two of his other friends to see the vice president of the United States.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of how he was able to he's able to talk to people, but only when he's trying to like manipulate a situation.
Yeah.
When he's lying, basically. He's a very good liar, and which makes sense because he has to pretend his entire life that he's someone else. He's not this creepy person that he knows he is or whatever inside himself. So even at school, he just has to pretend to be a quiet whatever, and then when he's with his friends, he's probably pretending maybe to be accepted or whatever, that, this makes them laugh, I'll just do this or whatever. So, but yeah, then apparently over summer and stuff that year, at the end of that year, people will say like, oh yeah, they just saw Jeffrey running through the woods, hitting trees with big sticks all summer long. I'm like, what the fuck?
What is this kid doing?
What is that? And then like the guy that wrote the book, John, he's saying like, oh yeah, we just all got like regular jobs, but that's what he did. He just could run around and everything. And so then we get a scene that I thought was pretty important, which we see Jeffrey is he got a hot dog from this is in the summer still, I think.
Yeah.
He got a hot dog from the fridge, and he lures a neighbor dog or a neighborhood dog. He's got a collar, so I'm assuming it's
someone's dog. Yeah,
but it's a '70s dog, which means they just let it do whatever the fuck it wants. And
everybody would just would let whatever.
It's a latchkey dog, apparently. Yeah. He lures this dog into the woods. He's able to put a rope around its neck, and then like takes it into his killing spot, and he pulls out a knife and he's about to kill this dog, and I was like, "Oh, John is gonna have a problem."
Oh yeah, I was very like
the dog. Also, they show him like you're my best friend. What's that?
You
shiny
gave me a hot dog that one time.
Yeah, what's that shiny thing you got in your hand or whatever? Like he is oblivious to what's about to happen, and then Jeffrey looks down at him and has mercy for some reason. He pulls a Harry and the Henderson. He slaps it. And he's like, "Get out of here, go home." He tells the dog, "Get out of here," and he lets the dog run away. And doesn't kill it. But then we see under the rock there's all these other animal skulls, so it's like, was that the first one I don't know why he let this dog go. But I think the other ones were dead already.
Yeah, I was like, I think that was the thing, is like this is the first time it was gonna be
like a
live animal, because all the other ones had been like roadkill or something like that. So like he had a moment of like, oh, can I do this to a living thing? I can't, this dog is just, I can't. So he lets the dog go. But then it ends on like, that's the last time he showed something mercy.
Yeah, so, dear God. But yeah, and then we cut to the senior year of these guys. And this was funny, I thought. Like you said, they were part of the Jeffrey Dahmer fan club, but they were also all part of the yearbook people. So they thought it was like a funny joke to put Jeffrey Dahmer in every picture they fucking could in the yearbook. So they would just sneak him into every picture that could possibly get happening. He's not even in the Honor Society photo, but the teacher scratched out his face because he's not supposed to be in the Honor Society because he's like a flunky. And so and
that's a photo that you can see.
Yes,
that's in the yearbook.
You can see his face blacked out from her scratching it off or whatever. But he's right in the center of the photo too.
It's so crazy that it's not like it's at the time, it's like we don't have time to retake these, so
yeah. And he would even draw like little cartoons because this guy's a cartoonist or whatever, he's been drawing forever. He drew cartoons for the yearbook that were like political cartoon style, but it's about Jeffrey Dahmer, or it has everyone. It's like Where's Waldo, but Jeffrey Dahmer's in there, so it's like it was just oh, we're gonna include this guy everywhere kind of thing. And so yeah, like that's just like his senior year was spent like that. And
he ended up he was drinking so much now that he was also starting to miss class too.
Yeah, like basically he is not doing well in school or anything. There's no point. But they even said but in the 70s they didn't give a fuck. Like, what are they gonna do? Call your parents or whatever? They didn't even do that then. So that must be an 80s thing. Like Ferris Bueller made it seem like they cared so much about you being in school or whatever. So, so this is 10 years before that or whatever. So
and to show you that guy was a child molester too.
Oh yeah, the principal.
The principal.
Oh, I forgot about that.
It's so weird watching that in Beetlejuice, and I have to like put that out of my head and be like, nope. This is a fun movie, but then you're like, oh god, this guy is. I'm sorry if I ruined those.
Thanks for ruining it for everybody. I remember that because he has some really creepy scenes in Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
With the sister, and I always remember that when I see those scenes. But for everybody else listening, the guy who plays the principal and the interior decorator, is that
he's the principal in there, and he's the dad in Beetlejuice.
The dad in Beetlejuice. He was a child molester, or is a child molester. Who's in prison, I hope now still.
I don't remember if he is now, but either way, still he's convicted of it. So
yeah. So this all leads to the one last big hoorah for Jeffrey Dahmer. His friends in this fan club plan. They sell tickets, which I was like, what the fuck is going on in this town? But basically, they sell tickets to a bunch of kids in school. They make $35 to pay Jeffrey to do his act in public to unbeknownst to. So he pulls a Sacha Baron Cohen, basically. He pulls a Borat, but he pretends to be disabled mentally, and he goes around
They go to
mall.
They go to the mall, and he just
first off, he drinks a 6-pack on the way to the mall, and then proceeds to do his, like walking up to people and hitting stuff over and being all crazy, and he knocks it. He just starts going insane on everything in the mall, and there's just a crowd of people that paid following him, laughing. And they said the security guards didn't catch on at all or anything. They just thought, look at those people laughing at that mentally disabled kid or whatever.
Horrible.
Yeah, how horrible. So like, yeah, but he would just go to like the restaurants and like hit glasses over. Then he'd go to like a store and knock over racks and make a noise and spit on stuff or whatever. Just like weird shit he would do. So then it was over, and he's like, and that was the last time I saw Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, that was the end of the Jeffrey Dahmer fan club, basically. Like, last time they did anything big.
It says after they dropped him off at his house, he says, from here on out, we excluded Dahmer from our group. I don't think on purpose, but they were just like, well, that's Jeffrey, and we're not going to hang out with him again outside of school, so that's it, because that's the end of it. So, and then this is also where we find out that, his mom leaves him now to be alone after him and his after they get a divorce or whatever, or they're working on getting a divorce. The mom like completely leaves him to his own devices.
It's weird because he kind of like stalks them at school now. Like like they don't really talk to him as much, and then like he's not really going to classes and whatnot. But like there was one scene like John is like at his desk and he looks out the window and Jeffrey's in the bushes like bah! At him.
Yeah, and now it's weird. Okay, so like I said, the filter is put on these memories, right? So
yeah,
now he's like, was he stalking us too, or like because he had people that like you said, the jogger or whatever that he had talked about stalking in high school, and he's like, were we considered part of these things? And even people started finding the dead bodies of animals and stuff in the woods, and they started bringing it up, and people thought there was like Satanist cults around. It was like, well, it's by a church, it has to be Satanist, or whatever. So there's all these rumors of Satanists and everything. But yeah, basically, we just are left with this kid Jeffrey, who his mom leaves him after school's done to be alone in a house until his dad comes back from wherever. I can't remember where his dad was, but
I think he's working.
Out. I think his dad was working and was like out of the house because they were separated.
Yeah.
So it was like your dad got the house in the divorce, so whenever the fuck he moves in, he'll move in, and you're here now by yourself. So he's left there, and yeah, that's pretty much where this ends. I mean, the main thing is we see the last thing in this book is his first kill, and so like that ends as far as we know for John's story or whatever. So like John's story ends with like, okay, high school's out, and then we see
he's going away to college.
Yeah, he went away to college. All the friends are out in college or whatever, and Jeffrey's still in Ohio, and he picks up a hitchhiker. And that is the last time we see that hitchhiker. And
I did like this next because the comic is all black and white, and it's like, black lines or simple drawings of everything, cartoonist. And then this next one is like after his first kill. The next one is called Fade to Black, and I loved how he went and made everything in the panels black with little tiny bits of light shining.
Yeah, because it's also at night.
It's at night, but like I just liked the way he did it. I thought that was clever.
Right. So we see the night of the first. Well, I don't know if it's the night after he killed the kid or whatever, the night of, but basically he's dismembered the hitchhiker, and Jeffrey's trying to get rid of the body that night, and he gets pulled over at like 3 a.m. by a cop. Luckily, I guess he wasn't drunk, or he wasn't drunk enough for a cop to care.
To notice, yeah.
And so, because also the 70s, I don't think they gave a fuck. They'd be like, get out of here, you scamp. Driving drunk again.
Drinking and driving.
That's the 4th time this week. What did I tell you?
Lucky that there aren't a bunch of mothers that are worried about this that are like going to help create laws.
Yeah, exactly. Those mad moms. And so yeah, basically, we get like he gets tested by this cop. And like we said, he's able to talk his way out of stuff if he needs to. So the cop's like, what are these garbage bags in the back of your car? He's like, oh, I'm by myself, officer. As you know, my mom left. So I'm a dumb kid. I didn't take out the trash when I was supposed to. And the house really smells now. So I just figured I can't sleep anyway. I might as well just throw these in the dump, which is 24 hours. And the guy's like, makes sense to me.
Yeah, sounds like a solid story.
Yeah, which, I mean, I guess it does if you're a small town cop.
In the set, in the set, I guess I was like, okay, he's taking the trash.
And so
good kid.
I don't think you would have said good kid, weird kid. But yeah, basically, they don't really question him further than that. And then he like turns around and just parks his car at his house because he's so freaked out that he almost got caught with a dead body in his trunk. And then this is where we get the only time any of the other friends ever saw Jeffrey. So sometime right around this first kill in 1978, late June, Mike, who was one of the friends, came back from, I guess he was out of college or whatever at this time for summer, and he's like, he came back to town, and he sees Jeffrey walking
in the middle of the road.
In the middle of the road, and he goes to pick him up. He's like, "Hey, Jeff, it's me, Mike," and then just like, "Hey," and he's like this weird like. The weird like or whatever, his thing.
His thing that they all knew.
Yeah, that thing that he would do. And so like, haha, you good one, Jeff, just like old times. And so he gives him a ride, and then he takes him to his house. He's like, oh man, your house is really dark. Do you need, you okay? He's like, yeah, my parents are gone. Don't worry about it. It's fine. He's like, okay, well.
Are you going to college this fall? And
nah.
He's like, no. He's like, yeah, I got into Ohio State.
Oh, that's right. Just say, and then like Mike's like, how do you fucking get into Ohio State?
You weren't even fucking in school.
Yeah, so he's just lying or whatever. But yeah, so then the whole time the dismembered body is sitting in here, and that's so in the timeline. I guess Mike thought about this later on and was like, holy fuck! That night I took him home, and in the car that was right next to me, within like 6 feet, was a dead body. And they even show. I don't know if this is actually what it was going on, but they show, I don't know if it's lighting, but it looks like ooze stuff coming out of the bumper.
It looked, I thought a little bit like that, and like maybe some smell lines coming out of it.
Yeah. So it was definitely like, there's a dead body there, and he was like, well, see you around, Jeff. He's like, see ya. And he backs out, and he's never thinks of Jeffrey Dahmer again. And that was the last time anybody saw Jeffrey Dahmer until the news. Where they're like, did you hear? They are all 10 years later. They're having kind of like a little buddies reunion.
And this is really interesting, too, because like they're all together. And this is still just before, like this is 3 years before he gets caught for all. This is 3 years that right before all the friends get together, before Jeffrey gets caught of all of his crimes that he's been committing.
Yes. And so they meet up for their 10-year like buddy reunion or whatever. They're all talking about old times. Like, hey, has anybody ever seen Jeffrey? And they're like, nah, he's probably some serial killer by now. Jokingly, they said that.
Yeah.
And we all laughed. And then 3 years later,
was he in the army? I don't know. He failed out of college or something.
Yeah, they kind of like, oh, I heard this, I heard that, but they don't know anything about him. But yeah, basically, we find out that he in 3 years later he got arrested for murder, and then found out he was a serial killer. And yeah, there's like all these things. There was one comic at the very end where we find that out, where it says 13 years later in 1991 he got a call, and it's like, yeah, what's up? And it's like, did you hear? Like Jeff, and he said some guy in Wisconsin killed a bunch of people. There was his apartment was full of bodies, and he had sex with the corpses and ate them. And he's like, wait, who? And he says, yeah, he went to Revere High School when he was in your class. Do you know, like, do you think you know who it was? Take a guess. And he says Fig, who was this other kid who was really weird in school. He's like, no, it's not him. And he's like, Dahmer? So he's like, that's right. Dahmer was the second guess in that list of weird people who it could be. So, like, I guess he did have, like, a sixth sense, but that's why they never hung out with him outside or anything. And that's why, like, possibly, like, the confirmation of this colors his memories or whatever. But for sure, like, he did think that the kid was weird, at least enough so they never wanted to hang out with him outside of school and whatnot. So whether that was because his family life was weird and all that or not, but I don't know. But basically, that is the end of this comic. So, John, what did you think of this one? What would you give it?
It was intense. I had to, like, remind myself too of, like, I knew when he killed, like, was it like 17 people?
I don't know how many he killed. Yeah,
I had to look up some of this. Yeah, so that's right. It was 17, and I was like, I knew there was, like, necrophilia and cannibalism involved and stuff, but, like, I didn't remember, like, he kept, like, parts or almost all of the skeletons of all of his victims. That's part of the reason they were able.
Well, yeah, because, like, in his house, like, in his fridge, there's, like, here's a head.
Yeah.
You know, like, and what I remember is, like, specifically there was one story of, like, I think this he brought a kid to his house, like an Asian kid, and he drugged him because he would always drug the people, and apparently he, like, drilled a hole in his head. Well, okay, no, hold on. He drugged him. Then the kid was eventually able to escape somehow. Like, he tied the kid up, and then the kid woke up and got out. The kid told his people that were around as Jeffrey was trying to get him back in the apartment.
Yeah.
And then now they're down on the street, and he's like, "This guy's trying to kidnap me." And, like, cops and stuff come. Are you okay? He's like, "Yeah, it's just a lover's quarrel."
Yeah, that's right.
And, like, the instant he talked about, like, any kind of gay stuff, the cops are, "Hey, that's between you and I don't want to know anything about any of that." And so, like, he just made people uncomfortable in order to make everybody go away. And then he brought the kid back up, who was still kind of out of it. Like, he wasn't enough to, like, he could fight him off. Like, once the cop was like, "Yeah, go with your lover, gay guy," or whatever, you know, like, just shooing them away because of the situation, and because of, like, his embarrassment or whatever. And then he went upstairs, drilled a hole in his head, poured acid in his brain, murdered, you know, like, all this fucked up stuff. It's like, what the fuck? Like, if only, you know, people weren't so, I guess, like, weirded out by, you know, gay people back then or whatever, or just didn't have these weird prejudices against stuff. They could have seen what was going on, like, you know.
Yeah, this could have stopped a lot sooner, obviously.
Yeah. And the same with these teachers. Yeah. That just reminded me of, like, stuff with the teachers. Like, if a fucking teacher said something or noticed something or tried to, you know, connect with the kid or something, you know, it's like, instead of just letting them, look at that weirdo. He's weird. Anyway, back to these other kids. Like,
and this part was talking about some of the stuff I checked. I saw when I was double checking, was like his nickname was the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, and it's like, don't give him, like, a, you know, seemingly kind of a cool name or whatever. He did go to Ohio State, but he basically like flunked out after a term. He had a grade point averages like below 1 point.
Yeah, he was like
the one thing, and this is just interesting from a personal perspective, is that he was in the Army from 79 to 81. He was discharged honorably. He had apparently, but he was like an alcoholic still, and they were like, "Oh, that's not going to affect him in his real life, so we'll discharge him honorably." So I was like, "That's weird," but whatever. But the interesting part for me is that he got his Army specialty. He was a medic, and he trained at Fort Sam in San Antonio in those years, which would be the same years that, because that was the base that my dad's family would go to for like supplies and was your
dad at the base?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like,
your dad wasn't in the Army, so
no, he was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
No, yeah, not for that. So it would, and my grandfather was in the Air Force, but that was the base that they would go to for like the PX.
When your grandpa was in the Air Force, it was part of the Army, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting to be like, they could have had gone to the base for stuff and been there at the same time, Jeffery and possibly even like I know that's a really like stretch. You could have watched him
buying booze at the what's it called, the BX or whatever?
Yeah. That's what I mean. That was like that's pretty much the only reason they would go to base, but it's still just like weird to think about like, oh, there's a real slight possibility.
Just a slight connection.
Just interesting.
Well, I was thinking back because I was trying to remember. I was old enough. I was 4 when they found he was on trial and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember seeing news of this and be like, "What the fuck?" When I was like 4, watching the news and be like, "The fuck is this?"
Kill people.
Yeah. Or just eat people.
Eat people. Yeah.
Acid people. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I want to watch Batman.
And I forgot he was murdered in prison.
Yeah.
I was like, holy fuck! Like,
yeah,
that's why I just didn't remember that. So
yeah. So I mean, that's someone else trying to make their name, although no one knows that name now. So
yeah.
But yeah. So what would you rate this one?
I mean, it was good. Like I literally had a couple moments of like, oh, I forgot some, I obviously didn't know as much of the childhood stuff, but like thinking like, oh yeah, some of these are tell signs and some of this is really cringe and horrible and gross, and like it definitely gave me like
goosebumps,
legitimate like stomach turns and goosebumps. So it was cool to see this perspective from someone else, like again, like not realizing that, or having to look back and be like, wow, I went to school with this person. We weren't like close or whatever, but like I had a relationship enough to be like, holy crap.
Yeah, no, that would definitely throw me if that.
We were talking about beforehand. It's like it's weird to think about at first. Like you knew this guy. Oh, I'm going to write a book. But I was like, yeah, but I definitely would like if I had I would be like, oh man, I can't believe I went to school with this mass murderer.
Yeah.
Like here's all these like weird stories. Like that's crazy to think. Like had I known, obviously. Had there been more inclination of those kind of things, like, maybe something could have been done. But so it was good. The art was, it was good. It was cartoony, but it was fun.
That's his style. I think it fit what he was telling. Like, it's kind of autobiographical stuff.
And I liked the transition, the dark to his character switching to like a murderer, but also being at night. I thought the art, I like that.
Yeah.
That was he had a very specific, like I said, kind of foreshadowy, kind of like, very specifically drawn events in there that I liked. I thought it was clever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna give this one an 8. It was solid. It was a good read.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one an 8 too. I didn't think there was anything like amazing or something in it, but like it was just solid, like really, really solid and very interesting.
And nothing was like, oh, get on, nothing was boring.
This book read very fast.
Yeah.
It says it's 300 pages on the digital book, but it's actually the comic is only 168 of those pages or something, and the rest of it's like bonus material. So originally I was like, wow, that's a long book. And then we started reading it. I'm like, oh no, I read it in a half hour or whatever, because it was just, it's like 4 parts. Like I said, it's like pre-high school, then like all of high school, then the end of after high school section. So it was like, okay, that's it. And, it's pretty straightforward. And there's like there's no parts where I was like bogged. I felt it was like, all right, move on, buddy, or anything. It was just straight, what kind of what you want with this, which is him telling about the stories that he had of him, and like there's definitely that color of this might have been weird or not. Like you said, is he stalking us now, or what? Like, was he trying to do anything? I don't know. I don't know if there are things that you can think back in your childhood once you know things. You're like, was Gramps drunk then or whatever? Because like I found out later on he was an alcoholic or something. You're like, oh, I don't know. I guess he was, or but you never know, kind of thing. So at the time you didn't know, but then you go back and you start thinking, was this all sinister? Was I almost murdered? Like, you remember that time he invited me over to his house or whatever? Like, so yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna give this an 8. You gave it an 8. I definitely think this is like a book you should check out if you like true crime or if you just like interesting kind of autobiographical books about kind of personal stuff, but also involving like this is also bigger than slice of life. It's like it's like oh wow, but it is slice of life as you get kind of what it's like in Ohio in the years and all that stuff. But then you also get it's Jeffrey Dahmer.
But it's Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah.
So we're tying it into that. But So also, if you guys this being the wrap up of Halloween, definitely if you didn't hear, we did all of our Friday the 13th Spooktaculars. We finished the last one on Friday, which we went out with a bang. Jason versus
Jason X.
Jason motherfucking X. So, we get to see who would win in that, amazing, face off or whatever.
And it's surprising. So definitely check it out. Check them all out. We get 6 episodes. So those were all fun. They're all up now.
I feel like we learned a lot about Jason.
I do too. Like I actually feel closer and like I do like Jason more than I thought I did.
Yes, me too. He's a sensitive man.
He is.
And, no one understands him but his machete. So check those out, and then but that's our last one we did, and then what are we doing next week, John?
Next week we're gonna do the Eternals. We're gonna dive in since we have
the movie. What the theme song of Eternals is.
Yeah. Well, since the movie's literally right around the corner, it should coincide with its release weekend. We're gonna dig into.
We're gonna read the original
Jack Kirby,
the OG,
not just the creator. What was it? The
concepted.
Yeah, he conceived.
Yeah, conceived by Jack Kirby.
Jack Kirby
had made love with himself to come up with.
Yeah, that was just to make sure Stan Lee knew it was his.
Yeah, conceived, written, illustrated, thought of,
coddled,
coddled, nurtured, breastfed.
Breastfed, bottle fed at least by Jack Kirby.
That is what it said in the credits of Eternal. So this was his if you don't know, return to Marvel after he left and went to DC and did all his epic work at DC. So all the stuff I know.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get into it because I know a little bit going into it because I wanted to know about the movie, but like I'm excited to get this in right before, so I'll get like a little more of that structure. Like, I know it may not be exact because I don't know if they're going from this or you said Neil Gaiman did a run of it as well.
Not a run, just like a 6-issue miniseries.
Okay, something. So I don't know 100% what they're all going to pull from, but obviously there'll be elements.
There's not enough to pull from. They're going to have to pull from everything because there's not enough Eternals material to really pull from multiple sources. I'm curious because knowing a little bit that they are these godlike creatures, but like my understanding in the comics too is like they don't interfere with a lot of things going on. I actually have no idea. I've never read them. So. Well, I from the trailer, but then also from like reading about it, it's like they're among us, but they don't interfere with things unless like certain things happen, and it's like high level things, and I don't know why. So I'm excited to like learn a little more. Right. Well, cool. We will check that out, and if you guys want to read that along with that, we're reading Volume 1 of Eternals, which is issues 1 through 11. So we might read all of the issues. We're not sure. We might just read the first. We'll see where the first arc is for sure. But for sure, we're going to read from that first volume of the Jack Kirby volume of Eternals. So, if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email us at planestrains.comicbooks, all one word, @gmail.com. Be sure to check out our coffee, which is it's not only the place you can donate if you feel like donating to us, but it's also a place where we have basically a weekly newsletter that we send out with all of the links to everything we do. So if you didn't know, we have a YouTube channel. I do reviews on comics. John, at some point, will be doing reviews on other stuff there. And we have all the podcast audio versions and the video of them that we do. We just put up videos with the pictures of the comics and stuff, so that you can see on YouTube as well. But we also have those reviews and everything I do every week. So if you like that stuff and you want to follow our content, if you guys wouldn't mind, go on there, give us a follow. And if you feel so inclined, please donate. We appreciate all we get. We had one, like we said, Dadpool29 gave us a nice $20, and that helped us pay for our hosting that we have to pay for every month for this. So if you guys feel so inclined, please do so.
Yeah, don't forget to check out our Twitter. And like you said, YouTube, we've got all that exclusive content on there. So on that note, I guess we'll see you on the next one.
On the next one.
Bye.